Um, and I would like to introduce our last speaker for today, who unfortunately is not present here. So we're gonna just hear a recording for Tessa Ratuszynska. So Tessa's work, Tessa spent 10 weeks at the University of Malmö in Sweden at the Center for Sexology and Sexuality Studies, and where she worked on research and design of an exhibition and experimental installation entitled With These Hands, which is also a virtual reality exhibition that explored survivors' experience of sexual violence. And I think Tessa's title for today's presentation is With These Hands, Explorations of Consent and Bodily Autonomy for Contributors and Audiences Inside a Virtual Reality Documentary. And I think Claire, you have the recording, or Miriam has. So
I have it. I'm going to give it a go. Let me know if you're not hearing or seeing it when I've got it up.
Hello, my name's Tessa Ratuszynska, and I'm engaged in a practice-based PhD at the University of the West of Scotland, and I'm exploring virtual reality and its potential as a mode of documentary. I have a background in fine art, installation, and also 5 years of industry experience as a VR documentary producer and curator. With These Hands, which is a working title, is a virtual reality installation where audiences embody the hands of contributors whilst listening to their experiences of sexual assault, survivorship, and accountability. This piece is the final practice-based outcome of my PhD. I'm currently halfway through a 3-month Saltire exchange where I'm based in the Centre for Sexology and Sexuality Studies in Malmö University, and I've so far been there across June and July. The centre is a multidisciplinary research school looking at sexuality from social sciences, humanities, medical and clinical perspectives. I've been researching ethical approaches to research involving participants who've experienced sexual assault and trauma, and research around consent and recovery from sexual trauma from within and beyond the school. In October, I'll be returning to do a period of making based between the university and Core VR studio in Denmark, where I'll be developing the prototype of With These Hands. So in lieu of being able to share any actual assets of the prototype with you now, let me imaginatively walk you through the first sketch of the experience. You walk into a gallery space. A volunteer directs you to a secluded booth with a table, a chair, and a privacy curtain. You're invited to go inside, sit on a chair, and are aided to put on the headset and headphones. The space is now dark, but you can look down at your hands and the table, and they're still here with you in the virtual world, but simplified, like line drawings. An instruction tells you to place your hands on the table to begin. You do so, and a voice begins to speak. You are about to hear stories which discuss sexual assault, shame, recovery, and hope, but not necessarily in that order. These are not stories with beginnings, middles, and ends. They have grey areas, complexity, and resist narrativization. Some of these voices are survivors themselves, and some are performers, but all the words are their own. They want to speak and be heard, and your role here is to listen. We do not always have capacity to listen, and if you do not feel like you can listen today, you are free to walk away and remove the headset. You're also free to do this at any time during the experience. Feel the table beneath your fingers. This table will always be here. If you need to take a break from listening, place your hands back on the table and the experience will pause. When you're ready to begin, lift your hands off the table. You do so, and as you look at these hands, they slowly morph into much more realistic hands, but ones you do not recognise. The room around you remains darkened, but the table grows over with grass. You can reach out and brush the grass with the new hands, and it responds to you. You begin to hear the voice of Bethany. You realise these are Bethany's hands. She talks about being sat in a park and being on the phone to sexual support services, trying to get on the wait list for therapy. The hands change again. Now you have Nina's hands. You're now in a dark space with thousands of dancing lights around you like fireflies. You can scoop them up in your palms and they vibrate and hang in the air wherever you push them. She talks about how she does not want her rapist to go to prison. She doesn't think it's helpful, and most rapists aren't in prison anyway. The table in front of you has rumpled fabric like bedding. You hear the voice of Ali. Ali recalls the painful experience of reading an accusation online from a former acquaintance that his best friend is a rapist. He talks of the difficulty he has in seeing his friend in this way, and his confusion about how he should now treat him, and his strong desire to distance himself from this friend. He also thinks back on all his past relationships and wonders if it's possible that he ever made anyone feel this way. You look down again at your hands. This time they are grainy grey, and you realise that these are your hands, as seen through the headset camera. The rest of the space is dark. The voiceover encourages you to move the hands and touch the surface of the table, grounding you back into the material world. With These Hands is designed for the Oculus Quest 2 headset and makes use of the headset's advanced hand tracking and camera pass-through abilities. With These Hands is the final practice-based outcome of my PhD and will be the first interactive, fully games engine built VR documentary produced across the PhD. The original PhD title that was attached to this studentship at UWS was Exploring the Empathy Machine, a practice-based investigation of the potential of virtual reality for the creation of immersive documentary experiences. The original task laid out in this studentship was to critically engage with the waves of 360 film and VR geared towards social good that followed the release of Clouds over Sidra, a UN-funded VR about a 12-year-old Syrian refugee, and the now infamous Chris Milk TED Talk, How Virtual Reality Can Become the Ultimate Empathy Machine. This time in VR history dubbed the Empathy Arms Race by Gabo Aurora. Kate Nash and others have suggested that VR affordances of presence, being there, and embodiment, being them, offers various opportunities for self-other hybridity in which the spectator's experience is taken up as the basis for an imaginative engagement with the experience of others. It is this that is often referred to within the industry as empathy. However, if this self-other hybridity becomes the basis of engagement with the documentary topic, we risk improper distance, as Nash suggests, failing to acknowledge the impossibility of knowing the experience of the other. Improper distance describes the risk of projection and assimilation. Advancements in my practice have led me to my current working title, Beyond the Empathy Machine, Embodied Others in Virtual Reality. This title is a direct reference to the work of Sarah Ahmed, whose work informs my analysis of the use of empathy within neoliberal arts initiatives and power structures generally, the cultural politics of emotion. My methods of queering, and thus making critical, embodied perspective in VR, in queer phenomenology, and in moving away from the improper notion of the simulated, unmediated, empathetic encounter with the other inside VR. Often framed as giving voice or as audience bearing witness, these experiences give little autonomy to either contributor or audience in the reception of this testimony. Working through and with Ahmed's strange encounters embodied others in post-coloniality, With These Hands utilises the affordance of VR interactivity to create a boundaried exchange between autonomous individuals, present and simulated, while simultaneously drawing attention to the mediated experience of the virtual. To describe not the other, but the mode of the encounter in which I am faced with the other, is hence not to hold the other in place or turn her into a theme or a concept, a thing. Some of my inciting questions across this PhD have become, from Nash, might some virtual reality experiences provide an opportunity for enacting attentiveness to the other, fostering awareness of the other and her particularity, and challenging self-projection and the absorption of the other by the self. Further, can VR embodiment move beyond problematic simulative experiences which risk improper distance? And can VR embodiment be mobilized towards a decentering of the audience? And can it facilitate the maintained autonomy of the contributor? My R&D aims across this project are to explore hand scanning and, if it's possible, to make these realistic textures or hand rigs from 3D scans of contributors' real hands, and will these work with the Quest 2 tracking? To explore the effect of the camera pass-through scenes on audience engagement, their identification and their sense of personal responsibility within the stories. To explore the different interactive consent mechanisms within the experience which promote audience autonomy in choosing to engage with stories. This could also be an inciting question: how will the project embody the questions of consent that are raised within the experience? And to explore what level of abstract interaction in each of the scenes, if any, is sufficient for audiences to pay attention to the stories, to feel themselves connected to the contributors, but that promote a critical distance and self-reflection. My collaborators that were established prior to the Saltire exchange are Sleek, which are a survivor-led organisation and hardship fund that challenge public perceptions of survivorship and champion survivor autonomy. And they also run men's learning courses, which are solution-focused interventions in the root causes of sexual violence and violence against women, creating a framework of informed, ongoing and enthusiastic consent of contributors throughout the making process, and the exhibition of the work is what we're working on together. The 3D scans of the contributors' hands are going to be provided by Camera Studio, which is a centre for analysis of motion, entertainment and research applications at Bath Spa University, and obviously Cora VR, the VR and AR production studio based in Copenhagen. In the connections I've established so far throughout the Saltire exchange have been obviously the Centre of Sexology and Sexuality Studies, and together with my supervisor of the exchange, Carlotta Holmstrom, we've created a reading module for me with the input from various academics that I've met there, including Charlotta Karlström, who studies BDSM and consent play, Eva Elmerstig, who studies young people, consent and sexual pain, Marie Carlson, who studies therapeutic talking exercises with survivors of sexual trauma inside women's prisons, and Charlotte Peterson, who researches men's experience of sexual trauma and violence. And then from wider inside the university, I've also spoken to Elizabeth Appelmo, who works in practice-based, arts-based study of gender, disability, arts and dance, and also uses the same phenomenological approaches I do. Susan Kozel, who's an eminent professor in practice-based research and phenomenology and interactive arts, and Josefa Wessels, who is a well-established VR and documentary maker whose work is in both empathy VR and also urban and sustainability studies. And throughout the exchange outside of the university, I've also connected to Tim Bishop, who's an interactive sound designer, but through him, the Inter Arts Centre in Malmö, which is part of the University of Lund. It's an interdisciplinary new media arts centre. Bombina Bombast, they're an immersive theatre company, and Darkrooms VR is another VR that's based around consent and BDSM practices, and I've met both with the director and the intimacy coordinators and some of the performers from inside that experience. And wider, a great opportunity has occurred, which is that with these hands has actually been commissioned for exhibition in IDFA, which is the International Documentary Festival in Amsterdam in November, and has also been shortlisted as a research project for the MIT Open Doc Lab, which is situated within IDFA. So that's the project so far. I think I'm probably at the end of my time. Here's my information, and yeah, thanks for listening.